What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel, my third video. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy that I started this channel. I'm so happy that I believed in myself to do it. Now, these videos and posting on YouTube, nobody ever said that it takes a lot of time and effort and how to get your rhythm going. So I'm still working on that because I do work. I have other things going on. I'm very active in my church, in the music department, on the praise and worship team and things like that. And I love watching these shows, so trying to find the time and the balance, and I get tired, and I'm like, if I'm tired, I can't record a video. But welcome back to another video, and we're going to be reviewing Love is Blind Season 9. We're going to pick up where I left off up until the weddings, and then I'm going to come back with some reunion recaps or rants, okay? And then I might watch some of these interviews because I don't want to get my opinions too jaded, but I do watch reviews in the meantime while I'm getting ready to watch these videos. Some people I agree with, some people I don't, and also finding that it's okay to have my own opinions, and what I'm thinking you're thinking too. So, and you know, design these recaps in the way that works best for me and get my points across, okay? All right, so let's get started. We're going to pick this up with the breakups, right? We're going to get started with Icky, Nikki, and Annie, all right? It's another case of her saying, you don't love me as much as I love you, and all of that, la, 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 la. And this is the same thing that happened in Mexico when she started spiraling out because she didn't like what Nick was saying about, you know, this process, you know, a little being unsure, but he's in it to win it and he's in it for the long haul to go to the altar. And then she internalizes this thing and spirals out talking about, you don't love me as much as I love you. And you said this and that. And he's like, no, I didn't say that. And don't put words in my mouth because I'm not feeling that. Okay. Now he's already in a lavender situation, right? And he's trying to make this relationship work as he should, right? Lavender or not lavender, if that's where y'all choose to push your relationship to. Let me stop doing that. However, you know, it's not cool when you put somebody, you know, it's not cool when you put, you know, words in folks' mouth. Everybody hates that, right? So I don't blame him for that. And it's like, you don't love me as much as I love you. But as a side note, right? Which annoyed me and gave me the biggest cringe of life when they're like kissing. She's like, more, please.
More, please.
Cringe. Like, girl, grow up and stop talking in the baby voice. More, please.
More, please.
Okay? No. Okay, but she brings up this thing again. You don't love me as much as I love you, while he's reassuring her that he does love her, and he's getting annoyed. The man just wants to eat his chalupa, and he tells her as such, okay, that we're not having this nonsensical argument about how much I love you. So anyway, the next day, he's over it. She sobered up somewhat, and he's just like, listen, I love you, but I cannot go to the altar with you because the thought of this does not make me happy. And of course, she's spiraling out. She's begging him. Girl, don't beg a man, but you are always desperate. In the pod, you are desperate between Nick and Brendan. Okay, and you're begging for a ring. Marriage is more than a ring. Marriage is more than your wedding day. Okay, marriage is a lot of work. Marriage has a lot of frustration, and you will spiral out maybe in marriage when the tough gets tough and the rough gets rough. And then for Nick, if you're going to be in a relationship with somebody, and arguments sometimes in relationships do happen over and over again, right? Not all the time, but you know, how much rope are you going to give somebody at the same time, Nick? Just saying. But you made your boundaries. You're not married to her, and you don't have to. And he told her that. He basically says to her that marriage is important to him, yes, but you cannot make me go to the altar, you know? And she's like, I'll be a great wife. I'll be a great this and I'll be a great that. And he's like, are we really going to drag this out? Annie, 1 + 1, you can't make it equal 3. And she's like, watch me. And I'm like, girl, the desperation is real, but this is you. Are you all the way sober? Or are you still a little a little drunk, okay? The answer is no. And I can understand it's being disappointing, but marriage is not just to get married. Marriage is not just for the dress. Marriage is not for the ceremony and the party. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, okay? And, he does ask her the question, how can your love be so deep for me, but also seem so shallow? Clock that, okay? That's a great question. I think Nick did the right thing in properly communicating. This is not going to work. She spirals out, but she'll get over it, and he should run away, and we'll see how it pans out at the reunion. All right, moving on. Joe and Madison, they break up ultimately, but it all starts in the tux fitting where he's trying to get his garments together for marriage. And, we see him trying different outfits, and then he starts freaking out. Nervous energy is abound. His friends are trying to make him feel comfortable in that broski type of way. And he's even like, guys, stop it. Shut the up, like he's starting to feel the pressure of the actuality that he's trying a suit on for his wedding, and he already has runaway groom syndrome, okay? And then he's the only groom in that session that gets a confessional because he's freaking out, right? He's like, and can we do this tomorrow? Because his mind is just so like, clogged with the fact that this is actually going to happen. And I never believe, me personally, he can dress it up. He can hold Madison's hand. He could have done all the things that made her feel loved in some moments. But I believe he never, ever truly liked her. Now, I'll give him credit that he tried the process. He tried to grow into it, maybe, potentially by sticking around, but it is the process to get to the altar. That is the point, and you give your decision there. But when he said, I'm sorry, when he said that voice is connected to that, I knew it was never going to work. Because that was like borderline rude, but that's what he really thought. Like, that is not what I envisioned. And, even though maybe the prompting of the questions in Mexico about what type of a woman that he likes was, taken out of context, but there's still some truth to it, right? He likes more petite women. Now, not that Madison is a big girl, because I don't believe that she is, but I look at Madison through my African American eyes, where size is a little bit different, where we want a little meat on the bone. It doesn't matter whether you're big or small, but we have a different mindset, I would say, for the most part. I want to speak for all, but I don't see her as big. She doesn't have a shape. And we talking about that, with the curves, that kind of like the hips come in. She's kind of like boxy, which kind of can come off like she's big by their standards, I guess. I'm not sure, but that's what it gives. Yes, he slept with her, but he never actually, if I remember correctly, he never said it out loud. She was putting it out there that we slept together. She wanted to be on Front Street. She was the one seeking to put that out there. Maybe he was trying to be more discreet. She was desperate to keep this man, and he always had some type of nervous energy when it came to her, but she didn't want to see the truth. She didn't want to see the writing on the wall, and that's that on that. So, eventually, after the dress fitting, the tux fitting, we find Madison crying because Joe said it's over. He cannot do that, right? And what really disturbed me about this scene, especially with Madison, as saying, oh my God, are you going to be okay, with me being with somebody in another year? Why would he care? Time has moved forward. When you break up with somebody, you either take time for yourself or you find your arms in someone else who's going to love you. You're not going to think about that person. You get out from someone else and you go under someone else. Is that the saying? Y'all tell me. Okay? Tell me what that saying is down in the comments. Okay? Like, no. Are you okay with us never kissing together, snuggling, or having sexy time? Girl, stop saying sexy time, because that is so corny. I would leave you on that. Stop saying sexy time, right? But you are getting, the reality of that actuality because you like him, I guess, or desperate for him so much that you can't fathom him being with somebody else. You can't fathom him sleeping with someone else. And that's what happens when you break up and you move on. You sleep with someone else. I'm just saying. Come to the resolution or the falling action of them breaking up. She's like, thank you so much for being on this journey with me. And in his confessional outside of the apartment, he's relieved. He'd been holding this in his shoulders for about a month or so of how he was going to try to make fetch happen with her, going to the altar with a girl he never really liked. If we go back and look at all the faces on social media about Joe and his face, even in the pods when she was like, I'm about to go blind any year now, like his face was like, yeah. Like he never truly in the pods, I believe, really was 100% all in. He was just hoping that her blinding eye condition, that she was at least good to look at when she couldn't look at him anymore. So that's how I see it. Okay, so they're done. We're over it. Moving on. So before we get to the weddings and, I'm going to talk about a couple of these couples before we get into the weddings. Now we're going to pick up with KB and Edmund in the snowmobile scene, right? I first want to say that I would love to ride on a snowmobile. That looks like a lot of fun, right? And the fact that they're in Colorado and that picturesque mountain, scenery is gorgeous, right? And if I was Edmund, like he did, he had a good time on a snowmobile, having this experience that, is really, really fun. But, his fun and smiling is short-lived because of course, Miss KB, Calabria, got a problem with it. So basically, she's upset about something. She goes to get them hot chocolate. She hands him some hot chocolate. And then she's just like, oh, thanks for helping me down. And he didn't. But he should have. But girl, you can also say, since you're sunning him so much, as you hand him the hot chocolate, would you mind helping me down? And he would have done that instead of being passive aggressive even with that statement because you already pissed. Okay? But I don't want to spend too much time talking about this because I was really confused about what they really fussing about. You're fussing because you feel he's being super dismissive of, what you got to say. He ain't trying to hear it. Well, two things can be true. Edmund, you shouldn't be dismissive of your lady because I know that would annoy me. I don't like being dismissed, right? I get that, right? But at the same time, we all got to take this accountability, right? And don't dismiss your girl. But Calabria, how are you talking to this man, off camera? We see how it's edited on camera. So I get why he might and may not feel like getting into it with you. I can totally understand. But this back and forth about being accountable and how you want him to do this and that and how he shouldn't, cut you off, this, that, and the third. I understand that. Don't get me wrong, right? But I feel like you do talk down to him. You do talk to him like he's a child because he's not one of those around the way dudes that you appear and how you come off to get. He's not a loud and abrasive alpha male. He's not that. Okay. Side note, I have looked at Edmund's Instagram and, just he's not that type of guy. Like if you go in his Instagram, the way that he's awkward on camera is the same way he is on his Instagram. The only thing about the Instagram, and I'm not trying to get far off the beaten path and talking about things outside this edited show, I have to wonder if the quirkiness, the high water pants being so tall, because he's a tall man, maybe he can't find the pants. I wonder if it's a persona that works for him in Colorado with who he is, right? I wonder, if he was back in West Virginia or somewhere else, would he be giving us the Urkel look? He is quirky. It appeals to potentially his demographic of clients as a realtor because he is selling homes and showing homes on his Instagram. Just saying. So back to the story that's already in progress. But, KB is talking about how he cuts her off, But from my point of view in this scene, she's doing a lot of talking and he didn't talk. And then when he started talking, she cut him off. And then to retaliate, he gonna cut you off because that's what you say I'm doing, so I'm fitting to do it. And he had some bars he didn't really hold back. So, I know the speculation of he's on the spectrum. Like I said, I never truly believed that. It could be true. That's why I'm saying I don't call him on the spectrum. I call him neurodiverse rather than neurotypical, right? Neurotypical is someone who we see, quote unquote, as a normal personality, normal, being able to discern and read the room in a normal type of way. Somebody who's neurodiverse may not read social cues as well as someone who is quote unquote neurotypical, right? There is some stunted growth. He's been through a lot. He's been in the foster care system. So there is some trauma there that is, what it is. I think there's a lot of different things, as the story goes on. So, yeah. But honestly, with them cutting, her cutting him off and vice versa in retaliation to her, saying that, you're cutting me off, she in turn gets frustrated and calls this man a Mitch. Ma'am, ma'am, ma'am. What we're not going to do, whether you feel like that or not, we're not going to call on international streaming television from around the world. We are not going to call a black man on camera a Mitch. We're not going to do that. You shouldn't be calling your partner those types of names in the first place, but we're definitely not going to do that in front of company. And when I say company, and I'm not just talking about the streaming world, I'm talking about the camera people. I'm talking about, amongst, you're the only, black couple on this season. We're not going to do that. We've got to use our words better. You're supposed to be the adult in the relationship. Let's act like it. And I understand we get frustrated, but calling a black man a Mitch is never the right thing to do. Case in point, if we hop over to the early seasons of Housewives of Atlanta, Nene said to Peter, quit trying to be a Mitch. Now, she never called him that. She never directly, but stop trying to be a Mitch. So putting that word in a sentence, in an area where they can breathe that word, and it is directed directly or indirectly toward them is never good. And it caused problems, as we know, in Nene and Cynthia's relationship, and took a long time for them to recover. And Peter Thomas is still feeling the aftershocks of that 10 plus years later. Okay, because we call him a housewife, we call him a Patricia, and all of that. He's never lived that down. So jumping back into the love is blind spirit, do not do that, girl. Do not do that, girl. It's a no for me, big dog. I'm sorry. Rude. And so whatever you have to say is null and void, whether you're right or wrong, because now you're just wrong. Okay? Two wrongs don't make it right. But the next day, Edmund brings her flowers. He says he's sorry. He loves her. He loves her. He loves her. And she's like, yeah. And that's when you take accountability and you take ownership. That's a man. That's a man. And that's my man. And that's my baby. You're going to come to the club. Girl, shut up. Because you're not going to do that for real. Let's keep it a buck. You're not going to do that. You're riding this thing to the end. And we're going to get into the weddings in a minute. No, girl. It is a no for me. You're rude. It's like that around the way girl for me, as I'm not an around the way girl. I don't even consider myself, I've never considered myself part of the cool people's club. I got good grades in school. I was quiet. I never fought. I never bucked up. I was kind of, I was chatty and personable with other people, but I never felt that I was part of the cool kids club. And girls like her that came off as around the way, cool, a little bit hood. I'm not calling her hood, but them type of girls never appealed to me to be friends with. And for me, it's a turn off. And Edmund, that doesn't match. It doesn't match. And it can work, don't get me wrong, right? But in this context, it don't match. My opinion. Okay, Moving on before we get into these weddings, like I said, now we're going to get to the couple I do not care about, Anton and Allie, because I'm about to go in when we get to the weddings because I got some things to say. Okay. So, Anton, I feel like he really does like Allie. He is blinded by her beauty. Is she really pretty? Sometimes when I'm like, oh, that girl is really pretty, and my husband be like, is she really? And aesthetically, how it is in 2025 with the looks, those copy and paste looks that that are out there with the fillers, the lips, the eyebrows, the makeup, and stuff like that. That copy and paste look. My husband be like, but are they pretty? And to me, because I'm into, beauty and things like that, I'm like, yeah. But to him as a man, he's like, no. But I am, and we are a 40 plus couple. Okay. So our idea of what beauty is as millennials might be different than these Gen Zers. Okay. But he's basically blinded by her beauty because she don't cook and she don't clean, right? And Allie, you cannot be that pretty, and then wanting to stay home and thinking that's your privilege and your right because you're pretty and you don't do nothing but lay on your back essentially, and maybe not even do that. You're just there for the bag. It's gonna get old, He might, if y'all would have gotten married, spoiler alert, that would have been exciting at first, new marriage, the joy of just getting married and having that feeling of bliss, that will eventually fade. And then you're not going to pick up the laundry. He's going to get ready to go to work and realize he ain't got no underwear because you didn't wash them. Not that you have to do your husband or your significant other's laundry because, I don't wash my husband's clothes and he don't wash mine, for example, but you don't clean. If you're going to stay home and, and you don't want to work, you going to school, the least you can do is wash his drawers. Because if I didn't work, the least I could do is take that off my husband's plate for providing 100% of the things that we need to stay afloat. I could wash his underwear, I could cook him a good meal, but you don't know how to do that. You can't order DoorDash every day. That's expensive, and he's already working and you're spending his money on delivery. Okay, you from Brazil, cook some Brazilian stuff. If y'all really had some substance to your relationship, what did they cook in Russia? My husband's from another country. I can cook West Indian food. I learned because I want to be invested in my man, but you're not invested. You're here for a show. Let's be very, very clear. Okay. And Anton, what are you looking for? You just blinded by her beauty, and you need to be held accountable for that as well. There's more than just a pretty face, and that's going to get old to you really, really quick. And you're going to be out back with Joe down to the strip club looking at titties. Okay. But they meet up with, her mom. I guess he's meeting her mom for the first time. And, she's bringing up the drinking, let that man have his beer. He's in trucking. He's not just in trucking, driving the trucks. From what we understand, he's an instructor, and that takes a lot of energy to teach people how to drive a big rig, an 18-wheeler. Okay. And plus, I think this is just my opinion and my purview. He is Russian. And, there was another show where there was somebody from Russia, maybe they're Married at First Sight or Love is Blind. They were Russian, and they said they drink vodka like water. So culturally, some things do align, right? Just like I could say, well, you're from Brazil, because you're so into your Botox and things like that. It can be said that, Brazilian women are mail order brides. How many men go down to Brazil to get them a Brazilian beauty, right? And that's your meal ticket. Who's to say? Okay. With the mom, I didn't agree with that. If, he go out to the bar because she already told her mama he go out to drink, that you just can't leave her home. She gotta come each and every time. That it makes almost making it seem like every time he goes out with his friends, his wife has to come along. You can't leave her home, which, within reason if you want to come, but you are still two separate individuals with separate interests and maybe separate friend groups. And that's okay too. It really is. And that when she go out, she's got to bring her man along to do the things that, with going out with her friends and all that. I didn't like that. Like, mama, you getting too much into their personal relationship and how they want to run their relationship. Keep your nose and your opinion out. But that's Allie's problem, because you sharing too much of your relationship, the day-to-day conflicts with your mama. That's why, number one, your marriage would never have lasted, because every time he do something, you gonna tell your mom and she gonna have an opinion, and he's gonna get tired of that with your dirty, non-cooking behind, who just wants to look like a blowed up blowfish with all that Botox in your face. Okay, so that's what I'm gonna say on that. Moving on, the scene with PJ Sparkle, aka Sparkle Megan, and Jordan. She's expressing that she wants to talk more and things like that. He's like, I'm tired. Well, I want to know about your work. And he's just like, listen, I work 10-hour days. I'm tired when I get home, right? And she has this persistence of wanting to know more about his work. She's some type of entrepreneur. Allegedly, I heard she's also a Nepo baby. I heard. But, for someone who doesn't have to talk a lot, who's made all their money, through their work, allegedly, the common person, when they come home from work, us regular working folk, we don't always want to talk about work, unless we could complain about what Johnny is doing, what Susie and Linda done said they got on our nerve, to get that off our chest to our spouse. But generally, we don't talk about work. My husband has a stressful job. He's, working 10, hour days sometimes. And, I'll ask him, hey, how was your day? Busy. I'm tired. A lot project. He doesn't really get into it. And I don't press him. He don't want to talk about it. It's fine. My job is, I'm in education. So I might have a funny story about Lily, Sammy, and Johnny, but, that's not all the time. So if he doesn't want to talk about his work, us normal people may not talk about it. You might hear, might know common names down to the office, Susie and Janet and Janice and all of them. You might, hear about them in passing, but girl, moving on. And he may not want to do a whole lot when he gets home, having a strenuous job. You want to get your relax, decompress, but you want to get right into it. Give the man a minute. Give him a minute and he'll get right back with you. But Jordan, you need to know that your partner does desire some level of conversation. You're going to have to compromise a little bit on that. Okay, you're busy, you're working, you got your son, you got all those things. And now you're going to have to prioritize another person that you are, tied to, right? And even if they got married, spoiler alert, even if you got married, right, your vows, do say that the most important person in your world is your spouse. And, I'm Christian, it's God, your spouse, then your kids. And, sometimes it's hard, I believe that could be a hard concept, to grasp a hold of when, you're trying to be a good father. That doesn't negate that fact that you won't. Doesn't negate the fact that your children or your child is not a priority, but you also have to prioritize all of those different things. And that might be hard for someone like Jordan to do, because it's such a fast process. When you're in a typical relationship, you can build to that, build a relationship with the baby mom, expectations, and have those hard conversations about those needs and who's prioritized and how we prioritize. But this is for a show, right? So I'm not going to stand and give a whole dissertation speech about that. But he said we got two different types of tired. You're tired from playing tennis and golf and going out with the girls for brunch. I'm tired from doing menial labor, talking to people, solving conflicts, consulting. I don't know what he does, but the brain is tired. You're just tired because you played golf and pickleball. and did a couple of emails. It's a difference. Jordan also says to Sparkle Megan, be my backbone and not my headache. You gotta learn to support your man. You chose him. You chose him sight unseen. You chose him knowing that he drives a 2013 Kia and you drove a mystery car, which we later find out is a Range Rover. Okay? I think Meg is in fairy la 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 land. You know, all these people in these pods are, you know, imagining what a life would be like in a fantasy world in a pod and never hitting the real world and having real world experiences on a real world timeline. You guys are all in fairy la la land. Even after they get married, all those couples where, you know, they do get married, and especially the ones in the past couple of seasons who break up, once fairy la la land is over and reality really strikes, y'all can't handle it. Okay? I think that Megan wants to plug and play everything, a plug and play husband, a plug and play, you know, tennis partner, travel partner, and be a plug and play stepmom, which is all fine, but we need to get out of fairy la la land. Now we're going to get into the weddings. The weddings. Okay. Now, episode 12 gets into the bachelorette parties, and they only give us like 2 minutes of this party, which is really crazy to me, right? So I'm going to read my notes a little bit. And it says, KB is giving a script, know-it-all chat about marriage and what it entails. You're acting like a know-it-all girl to these girls in this, you know, 10-second, you know, that we see you talking to the girls, but you're not even owning up, as we can see, to be someone who should be shedding a light and a pillar in the I'm about to be marriage community. I'm about to be married community. You're not high and mighty, and I don't like that know-it-all spirit. Irks me so much. It's fake. Megan chats about, you know, the good, but concerned about the lifestyle of being able to jet set, the lifestyle of being able to go to nice and fancy and expensive restaurants, you know, at any given time, buying a bag, you know, and I think those things are great. I wish I had that one day. Hallelujah, we will. Okay. I'm going to speak those things as if they already are. We're going. Okay. You know, it seems like it's important to her friends just, you know, because they're all in that rich girl, influencer girl, lifestyle, which is all well, fine and good, right? But, you know, what is important? You know, once you're in a marriage, you know, you're not even going to be going out with them like that anyway. Yes, you're going to go on girls' trips, because I do and have gone on girls' trips without my husband several times, okay? But sometimes you're not going to be able to do those things. Sometimes it is just going to be at home, chilling and spending time and getting to know each other, you know, in your own world, undisturbed, uninterrupted by distractions, good or bad, right? Without paradise, having some real world. So, but one of the friends did say, I don't want you to go into this because of the kid, because you fall in love with the kid, and that is what drives you. And I do agree with that, right? You're not, you know, the little boy's mother. You're going to be a stepmom. How much does he have, his son? How much will you actually play a role in the stepmother role? What does that look like, right? What does being a stepmom entail? What are the rules of engagement in your relationship? And you may not know what that is. Has that been established? Okay? But there's that one friend that said, you have a beautiful life. You know, you never know. But, you know, you have to have the angel and the devil on your shoulder at the same time, I guess, you know, how they did back in the day on them shows, on the sitcoms. But, you know, there has to be those two schools of thought to make a rational decision. So I think both sides are very valid. What is important to you, right? How important is your lifestyle? How important is it that, you know, he's able to do all the things that you're used to doing? You know, I do agree with Megan in, you know, with Jordan not wanting to talk and have a lot of conversation. You know, how will you court me? I think that's a valid question. You know, you just can't go to work not talk to me, and just watch a movie without talking, and conversations are one worded. But what is else is there? How are you going to court me? Not always going to a dinner. How will you court me? You're going to take me to bowling if that's what your pocket can afford. Are we going to do mini golf on a Saturday, even with the sun, right? Maybe not with the sun, but what are you going to do to have some meaningful engagement with me? That is a great question, and I think that's very, very valid. All in all, with the bachelor and bachelorette parties, they don't really give us much. Literally just give us 2 minutes between the girls' parties and the guys' parties. And the guys aren't really saying too much, so that's why I don't really have a whole lot to say, except for with Aunt Anton, whose wedding is up first. You know, he's just saying, answering his friend's questions and saying she don't cook, she don't clean, but, I like her and I really don't have a good reason why, other than she's pretty, to want to go the distance with her. So that's kind of it. So Allie's friends, on the other hand, make fun of the way he's providing and look down on him because he's a truck driver. And they're saying, a woman of your caliber, how would that be a good look? People are going to look down on you. And then they make fun of how much money he makes. Does he make good money versus okay money or a lot of money? And Allie, your friends are two divorcees. And is the girl who made the comments about how much money he makes, is she also Russian or maybe Ukrainian, because she has that type of accent in that part of the world? By trade, Allie, you're a nurse, so you make good enough money, right? Nurses make a decent salary, a good salary. He's a truck driver. Truck drivers do make good money. He's an instructor, so I'm pretty sure that there's incentive with that level of certification that he's making good money, right? I've known truck drivers and I know truck drivers and they make good money. So what is good money to y'all? Because girl, you want him to pay for your school, pay for where you go to live, and pay for your Botox. And I'm going to get into that in a second, okay? Because I got something to say about that. So when we're getting to the weddings, Allie is showing up at the venue, going into her bridal suite. And what I liked, she came in there, to get made up and stuff like that. So she didn't have any makeup on. But that Botox was Botox. And it was like, she don't even look like a person to me. Now, to me, it was given fillers. And I got a problem. Young ladies who are under the age of 35, and I'm being so generous when I say 35, I really should be saying 40, under the age of 40. If you have a 30 or a 20 in your age, you do not need Botox. And if you get it, I understand that's your choice. But why so much? To me, Botox is for those aging women, right? Back in the day, you would talk about aging women and trying to stay young, and they would get a facelift and, they would look all pulled back and things like that. And now with these beauty standards and these copy and paste faces, with the fillers, the Botox and things like that, it doesn't look right. You're not even 30 years old and your face is full of filler. I'm not a doctor, but the muscle fatigue in Botox is going to wear yourself down. If you are 27 years old and it is for somebody who is 15 to 20 years your senior, the brain fusion thing just closed for you 2 years ago at 25, right? Your brain was fully fused where you can make a decision, have your muscles fully, matured as well, and you're putting Botox and fillers that freeze up, I mean, not to put my business on the street, but I get a little right here, and that's it. And honestly, that's for my own personal reasons, but I am 40 plus. In a few weeks, I'll be 43 years old, okay? I don't need it. I want it, and I was put a lot of thought into that, right? And I don't even know the next time I'm supposed to get it, do I really even need it again? We will see. But it's not to make my lips bigger. It's just for symmetrical purposes. And that's it. Okay. But again, I'm in my 40s. Okay. You are 20 something, and I would not get it anywhere else. Honestly, I don't even look. 40 is looking good, honey. Honestly, I really don't even need it. I don't. Skincare is looking good, smooth, smooth, smooth. Okay. But you're ladies under 35. If you have a 30 or 20, you may not need it, but to each his own and for different reasons. So that's your right. But in my opinion, 27 and you've probably been getting it for a while is too young to get Botox. Housewives of Atlanta reference, Kim Bierman's girls, I believe they're not even 25. And you watch some of these shows with these young girls, especially the Bravo shows, they had that Next Gen NYC series. And a lot of those, less melanated girls, they had a lot of Botox. For the most part, most of them did. And you're not even 25 years old. Come on. It makes you look older. It makes you look older. And y'all look older than me, and y'all be 22, and I'm 42. Just saying. I think she looks like a cartoon in my opinion, so I'm not gonna go too much on her. They're in the bridal suite, and the drinking thing gets brought up, by the mom saying, "I don't like to drink. We don't drink in my family." Like, mom, shut up. Nobody cares. Okay, and Allie, stop going to your mama with all of the details of your relationship. And you're going to do that because you don't even like him. You never really got to know him in the past. I don't know why y'all even like each other. It was so quick. My name is Allie. My name is Anton. I love you. You love me. Do you want to marry me? Yes, yes. And then you ask him superficial questions and it doesn't seem like you address issues head on. Okay. Then we go into the suite with Anton, and he's trying to get ready and things like that. And his mom comes in. She's excited for her sweet, sweet baby to get married. She says he's the best, in the world. He has a kind heart, an amazing soul, and all those kinds of things. She encourages them, as she should. Parents, it's a great idea to big up your children. Make them, feel good. Give them words of encouragement rather than tearing them down. So I'm all for that. So then the other scene that kind of like made me look like this is the scene where then Anton's mother comes into the bridal suite to kind of, check in with Allie. Her mother is there, and, she's saying that she looks beautiful, and, do you love my son, and why do you love my son? And Allie says that she loves him and things like that, and she's saying that tearfully. But what I couldn't get over is how the mom was very standoffish. You could read that all in her body language. Big Mama was there being politically polite, right? But you could see that the mom didn't see it for, Anton's mom, her son, and things like that. The way that she stood so far back from the conversation between, Anton's mom and her daughter was very telling. Read the body language. I've seen that. Yeah, peep it. All I can say is just peep it, okay? It was very telling. And also, too, that enter the bridal suite to wish, Allie well are her sisters. So her two older sisters come in and they're hugging her and smiling. And then you got the homely sister, the one that, didn't agree with her being on the show, standing in the back with that same standoffish body language. I see where she gets it from. She gets it from that mama, honey. She gets it from that mama. And to me, let me tell y'all something. The sister, the standoffish sister, and Allie with the Botox, without the Botox, they are the same face. So basically, if Allie didn't get all that Botox injected in her whole body, that's what she would look like, right? And I think that to me, Allie is their meal ticket into her landing a rich husband, where the other sisters may have a different upbringing. Maybe they grew up in Brazil, okay? And now, you have Allie and the other sister, maybe they, lived in the States or, a mix of that. And, she's their meal ticket because, again, in my opinion and documentaries and different things I've seen, men come to Brazil for mail order brides. They come there to have a good time with the good time girls. It's a thing, right? And, now that they're living in the States, this is their meal ticket, right? And her getting the Botox and her being the one and things like that, they want to make sure she marries well. Her little Botox baddie friends, them little evil, divorced, angry, bitter Bettys, right? All of them, they're trying to get her into a certain lifestyle and that like that. But that sister, telling her, I don't agree, but you're grown. Who are you, sister? Like, for real, like, that just pissed me off, right? Who are you going to tell me? How are you going to tell me, sister, no, sister, I don't agree with you, but I'll be here. Like, you're the mama. Like, listen, to be honest, y'all all are nasty in the spirit. I'm so sorry. Allie, you look like your sister without Botox, and honestly, y'all look like y'all mama. So I guess that's why I get it. You saw your future and it started at 27. I'm sorry, I'm about to drag you because the way that how arrogant, whether you like Anton or not, how arrogant you are just behooves me. You Gen Zers, sometimes, I'm so sorry. That's not life. But every generation has its thing. So I guess. So moving forward with this couple that I never really cared for, Anton goes first. He says, I do. Allie says, I cannot be your wife. So she's crying, blah, 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 blah. Anton's devastated and shocked, I guess. And, Allie's mom, takes her off with alongside somebody else, can't really remember, taking her precious, precious daughter from this drunkard. And Allie claims that the person that she met in the pods is not the same person that's in the real world. And I don't even know who that is because y'all have no substance, both of y'all. Both of y'all had no substance in the story that could even be edited. So I guess you're right, but you never liked her. And Anton, your reasons for liking her were very superficial. So you get what you get and you don't pitch a fit. But the way that Anton's people call her a cold-hearted BBB, I ain't gonna hate on it. It is what it is, right? And maybe she is. I don't know. But y'all not getting married, and I think that's the right decision. She's crying and, upset that, I hurt him so. Okay. Great. Moving on. Edmund and KB's wedding. Edmund is excited. He's ready. You see it on his face. He says his feet is hot. So I think that's pretty cool. His feet is hot and he's ready. He has no cold feet. KB, she goes into her bridal suite and she's enamored by the setup. She's more in love with the setup than she is with Edmund. Okay. And, I like that for her, I guess. They're getting ready. And one thing after getting ready, which I thought was odd, she had already done her own hair. It didn't look all of that. It looked like, the weave that she had, she kind of like put it up in a clip, got her little side finger waves and baby hairs laid. And then she's doing her own makeup. As a person who loves makeup and does makeup, what were you doing? What was up with that application? It was all wrong. The order, like, if you do makeup, watch a couple of makeup videos, she don't know what she's doing. Where's the makeup artist? And that's very telling to me. They asked where her mama's at. She's like, oh, he's probably down there with Edmund. She loved her some Edmund. We go down to Edmund's suite and we find that KB's mom is there encouraging him. It was very nice. I thought that was warm and welcoming. And we also find that, Edmund's mom is not coming to the wedding. His dad will be there, his fifth grade teacher. Edmund is super disappointed that his mom couldn't be there. He says that she had other things to do and couldn't get back to the wedding. I think that's very, on par and very on brand for her not being there for her son. Him being in and out of foster care, she was not always there for him. So this is very on brand, but I'm glad that he had some support, even from KB's mom, who was very sweet to him. And then we also meet Miss Jessie. We meet Miss Jessie, his fifth grade teacher, who, that scene, I watched it twice, maybe even three times. Very warm, very loving. It got me very choked up and emotional. I've been an educator, and, you can make a difference in a child's life, in, your student's life. And it could be lifelong. I was thinking the other night about who my teachers were. I can name them from kindergarten to my sixth grade homeroom. My main teachers. I can name them all. Okay, I can say who my favorite teacher is to this day and whom I still keep in contact with. You can make a difference. Even on Facebook, I have teachers that comment on my things, and you keep those connections, good or bad. They see how you've grown. They practically kind of had their part in raising you, and your education in your educational way, and sometimes it does pour over. So it was very nice, and she encouraged him, she loved on him, and not only did he make a difference in her life, she made a difference and an impact in his. And I think that was so loving and warm to see, based on what he's been through. I mean, beautiful, beautiful. So what I also love, when we get to the wedding, we're gonna get to the ceremony now. So Miss Jessie's fifth grade teacher, who came in with her husband from West Virginia and things like that, she walks him down the aisle. Also, too, we never get to see any camera time, if any was had, with Edmund and his father. We saw, one scene with him and his mother and KB, which was interesting. I wonder if the father and Edmund had any interaction. But again, Miss Jessie, his teacher, walks him down the aisle and makes sure that he gets up there to say his vows, right? KB comes in, she looks good. I like her dress. I wasn't a fan of the hair and the makeup. It was low hanging fruit, but, it wasn't that bad. It was just like, we saw the progression of, she did her own hair, she did her own makeup, but the dress was given. I did like the dress a lot. Just getting to the vows, Edmund is saying he loved her. That's, he cares for her. I'm so glad that they met, all of the good things. And, she gets her vows, and she's saying how much she loves him. He's a kind spirit and all those kind of things, just like she did in her confessional. He's a kind man. He's a loving man. He's a growing man. He's a healing man. Girl, what was all that? And she kind of does the same thing in her vows, right? Edmund says yes. KB does not. She barely says, I do not, where Edmund lets out this cry of disappointment. He can't handle it. Now, I know the internet is ablaze about that cry that he let out, but honestly, he's an emotional guy. We've seen him cry several times on this show. He's in pain, and how he processes his pain is how he processed it. Honestly, I found it very sad. I know that, it's funny, haha, but I don't find it funny, in my opinion. Somebody being hurt, for me, is never good and feels good to watch in that way. To me, he comes off, not to say he is, little feeble-minded in how they edit him. And, I have worked with students who have been on the spectrum and are neurodiverse. And one thing about me, old people and people who can't speak up for themselves, when you mess with them in a way, I don't like it. You want to make me mad, mess with somebody, an older person, or somebody who can't take up for themselves. That will piss me off, for real, for real. So there's that. So I didn't really find it funny. I found it quite sad. I did not like how Calabria then tried to comfort him. I feel like she was also adjusting the narrative, that she does love him, in a way, like it's just not her. She's not 1,000%. I love yous for me equate to, I like going out to dinner. I like running. I like, like just everyday likes and loves, right? I don't think she was loving him romantically. She was not in love with him. She might have liked him or loved him in a friendship, or that's my little brother, that's my annoying little brother realm, but she didn't use the word love in a way of a romantic partner. That her comforting him, in my opinion, I know there's schools of thought, but my first mind is that you're smoothing things over. You're talking to him in social worker speak. You are doing it in an educational way, because there is a tone when you're trying to talk to one of your students and or clients in a way that you're meeting their need. And she does that a lot. She also has a tone where she's sunning him. She has a tone where she talks down to him. So she picked one of her knives, one of her arsenals, one of her things to communicate to him while protecting herself in one way or the other, whether she looks bad on camera or she's also lamenting over breaking his heart. I think that, when you're breaking up with someone, whether it's Joe breaking up with Madison, whether that's, you know, Nick saying no to Annie, all these breakups, they're not easy, and they do break your heart because you are harming and hurting another person, so to speak. It doesn't feel good, but she never spoke good to him throughout of what we could see. So I wasn't feeling that. I didn't like her. I didn't like the fact that they walked off of the platform hand in hand. He's like, he's basically, is this the end for us? Like here? And she's like, baby, I'll never write you off. And in my mind, I was like, girl, you ain't never going to talk to this man like again. You are going to run away. You've done your time. You made it to the altar. You met your contractual obligations. You out. And then Edmund asks for a minute, and he walks off and have a moment to break down and cry again. And thank God for Miss Jessie, who reminds him, how great he is, and how he's beloved, and he has a positive impact on the people that he meets, really encouraging him as a mom should, as his mother should have, as somebody from his family should have, even the friends that were there acting as groomsmen from his rollerblading community. We thank God for Miss Jessie. I've heard the jokes that it's giving the blind side. I really don't find that really funny, because he is somebody that needs somebody, and if a white woman who is his fifth grade teacher is the one that's going to, stand by him and hold his arms up in his time of need, then so be it. And I thought that was touching. I get the blind side reference. Y'all are creative, but everybody needs somebody to lean on. And that's how I see that. So, she reminds him of who he is, and maybe she's not the diamond you're looking for. She's probably just a sapphire. She kind of ate with that line, in my opinion, about the sapphire versus the diamond, and she's not your diamond. She's probably a sapphire. I thought she ate with that. That's just my opinion. So in the final 10 minutes, I'm like, we ain't got the third wedding at the time. We don't have the third wedding, and we have 10 minutes left in the episode, and you get with, PJ Sparkle, Megan, and Jordan, and they're on the couch talking. And, she says she woke up that morning and she was a mess, and she's been thinking about everything. And basically she says she can't go to the altar with him because of the lifestyle. Is this the right thing for her to do? And, they're two different people. He doesn't agree, and he's hurt, and I didn't like that, because I actually like Jordan. I think that, he wasn't being a hobosexual, like, especially when you have these stronger women, on the show. And, Megan started out, I'm this and I'm that. I have that and I have this, and I'm looking to build an empire. And then you get the guy that drives a 2013 Kia, while you, surprise, surprise, drive a Range Rover. And that was your surprise car, allegedly, is what I heard in the streets. Right? You picked him. He said who he was. He did not lie to you. He said he had a son. You could ascertain that he doesn't make a lot of money, or he is frugal. You went to his apartment and you saw that, he has a 1-bedroom, which his bed is a living room, and his son has the designated bedroom when he's there part-time. Okay? He told you just who he was. and you picked him anyway. You could have picked Mike. You could have picked Blake should he had sticked around because you liked him. That was, I think, believe that was your real number one. You could have made Sparkle Meg a different choice, but you chose not to. Okay? You chose not to. And he doesn't find, that there's much difference between you two. I didn't understand that because, there is a difference. You might have, maybe some of those core things, fundamentals, I guess, but I didn't see how they were much alike. I think he was a really just agreeable, not in a bad way, but agreeable, nice guy, who was forthcoming about who he was. And, clearly Jordan's hurt by, where she's at. He was going to go the distance with her. And, he has to suck it up and say, listen, I get it. I'm hurt and I got to go pick up my son. So I got to dry these puppy dog tears and I got to go be a man about it. I think that was highly disappointing. So they do not get married. I want Megan, Sparkle Meg, to drop the sparkle and just be Megan and know that, the fairy tale that she's dreaming of is just that. It's a fairy tale, right? Jordan, you will be fine. You have to find somebody who you're equally yoked to, just as Meg will, all right? And we had 5 couples go in, 2 made it to the altar, and 0 marriages. So that is the end of my video. Thank you guys so much for watching, sticking around, and with the little traction I'm getting with my videos is highly encouraging because these do take a lot of time. I do plan on reviewing Married at First Sight, so stick around for those. I hope to get videos, episodes 1 and 2 out, and then 2 and 4, and then we'll figure out the rest. So thanks so much for watching. Until we meet again, make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe to my channel here down to the bottom of YouTube and help me to bring it up. So thank you guys for watching. Have a great one. Until next time. Bye.